When you lose your job in Oregon, there's a safety net in most cases. It's found in the Employment Department. That's the state agency that, despite its name, also helps you with unemployment money. But recently, that safety net has been a nightmare for far too many people. They're not getting their checks, and when they try to call to find out what in the world's going on, they're stuck on hold for, I kid you not, as much as 7 hours. That's a long time. We've heard from several of you who either went through that or are still going through that now, and I'm so sorry you are. So lawmakers, fed up by the lack of action from the department, recently hauled the leaders in and demanded answers. Senator Deb Patterson shared a story from someone who called her, saying they'd tried to get a hold of the department hundreds of times.
All but one of those calls, that person received a busy signal. The last call gave them an estimated wait time of 7 hours and 18 minutes, so they put it on speakerphone. And when 15 minutes was left of their wait time, the call was disconnected.
Oh, can you imagine? Whoa. The Employment Department's director is David Gerstenfeld. He told lawmakers that staffing levels are too low because, well, they've been underfunded by the feds, and the funding that they did get during the pandemic, it has just ended. The department recently installed a new online system to process claims. It's called Francis Online. It costs about $100 million. They say it's an updated and more streamlined software than the system that they had before it, and they'll eventually help get people through the system faster. But the real problem, they say, is staffing.
Between April of 2023 and February of 2024, which was right before we went live with our new unemployment technology, the percentage of people that we were able to get their first benefits within 3 weeks, that federal benchmark, went from about 92% to about 65%. So that predated the switch to the new technology and was because we had only 1/3 as many employees to do the work.
It's quite a crash in about 10 months. So in order to catch up, the department, well, they had a good idea, they thought anyway. Let's just answer the phone less. I'm not kidding you. They're no longer taking calls at all on Monday or after 4 o'clock on every other day. That's how you get less calls coming in, I guess. You just don't answer them. Gerstenfeld says it gives his employees uninterrupted time to really focus on these claims. But lawmakers in the House had real trouble buying that.
My concern is that you chose Monday to be closed when everybody's on their Sunday trying to get their claim. I appreciate your comment about trying to catch up on everything, but for all the folks that can't get through the Francis system on Sunday, they're calling us now. So thanks for sharing. But I think the reality is that your 17,000 phone calls that you get in a day, we're now getting some of those, which we put more pressure on your agency to try to help our constituents. So I am trying to understand why Monday was the right day to be closed.
Yeah. Gerstenfeld stuck with his argument, though, saying the agency's data shows that they actually get more calls midweek than on Mondays. He's hoping that giving employees Mondays to solve problems will mean that fewer people need to call on Wednesdays and will help solve the overall problem. Representative Anna Scharf ripped their new system.
And then I'm struggling with the inabilities of Francis to actually, we must have bought a mediocre software program, because I can buy a Domino's pizza on my phone and I can watch them putting the toppings on it and know exactly when it's going to hit my door. So I can't figure out why Francis can't allow tech savvy applicants to log in and look and say, oh, they're putting pepperoni on my claim. It'll be here on Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Francis is a failure in that respect to me, which is a failure on the software company that provided it to you.
Pretty devastating review there, eh? Gerstenfeld says people can send messages to the department on Francis Online, but that sending multiple messages on the same topic slows everything down. He said the same thing happens with multiple phone calls because the staff then have to go in and clear each one. But he says there is a light at the end of the tunnel. The legislature sent the department more money to hire more people. He believes those folks will be up and trained by and on the job by the end of the summer. Lawmakers expect to see some change by then. They told Gerstenfeld and his leaders to report back with an update in September. Meanwhile, you can reach out to us if you've had problems either with unemployment or paid leave in Oregon. Send an email to us, will you? Send us at thestory@kgw.com or leave a voicemail 503-226-5090. Now let's move our gaze to Multnomah County. Many people may wonder where all the tents and tarps dotting the streets are coming from. The county, with your tax money, pays for thousands of them. And new records show the dozens of groups responsible for handing them out. We wanted to get to the bottom of it, so of course we sent Blair Best to do that. She reports that despite the obvious purpose of those supplies, they're actually being used for all kinds of things on the streets.
I never remember the codes.
Under the Morrison Bridge in Portland's Central East Side, a storage unit is packed with supplies for homeless people.
So this is our lovely little clothing and bedding exchange.
Sandra Comstock runs Hygiene for All, a nonprofit giving homeless people survival tools. Multnomah County records show in the last year, the group handed out about 230 tarps and 65 tents, mainly during the winter months, they say.
I mean, it's a matter of life and death. Well, we get them from a variety of places, including Save Lives Oregon, as well as the Joint Office of Homeless Services.
The Joint Office of Homeless Services is the county and city-run group helping support nonprofits like Comstock's. Last week, county commissioners approved setting aside about $750,000 taxpayer dollars to pay for more supplies like tents and tarps. Groups like Hygiene for All then give them to people like Natalie.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know how many tarps I have. Quite a few. They wear out. Rats chew holes in them.
But she knows where to get more.
Street Roots, Rosehaven, and the Q Center.
In the past year, the county has supplied more than 24,000 tarps and more than 6,500 tents through various avenues. Records show Central City Concern got the most, 680 tarps and 260 tents. Their spokesperson told KGW in a statement, in part, quote, Central City Concern's approach is in alignment with Multnomah County's in terms of viewing tent and tarp distribution as necessary life safety interventions. The distribution of tents and tarps allow us to center the humanity of people living outside who otherwise would have no protection from the elements, and also facilitates opportunities for our outreach teams to build trust and relationships. All right, so at this one site, we've counted 9 tarps and 3 tents, and not all of them are used for staying out of the elements.
I hardly ever sleep in them.
Instead, Taisha uses her tents for storage, and Jennifer, she's addicted to fentanyl.
It's really just something to do. Boredom, really.
She uses her tent as a private place to smoke.
I don't think it should be illegal, but I don't think you should do it in front of, youngsters.
Records also show Rapid Response, the commercial cleaning company the city pays $26 million to clear homeless camps, removed 8,000 to 12,000 tents in the past year. Arguably, many of the same tents Multnomah County paid for.
I'm very impressed with what's happening at the county level, and I just wish the city would row along with us instead of constantly putting obstacles in the way.
Some Portland City Commissioners see it differently.
This vicious cycle of whack-a-mole and people moving down the street with new tents and tarps from public entities or nonprofits, we have to stop this cycle in our community.
Blair's with me now. So Blair, strong feelings on both sides, but let's get a little bit deeper on this. How does the whole thing work? I get that the county pays for the tents and tarps, but how do the nonprofits get them?
Well, there's a warehouse where all of these supplies are stored, and nonprofits make appointments to pick up the gear. Records show that tarps are distributed about 20 at a time. That's how many are in a case, and tents and sleeping bags are limited to about 5 at a time. Now, that woman who we talked with today, who runs that nonprofit under the Morrison Bridge, she says supplies are limited, so she saves what she gets for the winter months.
We provide them tents and tarps, especially in the fall and winter when it's a matter of life and death. Really what I'm most concerned about is people's ability to survive the winter. When people are deprived, they're in crisis, they're in trauma. So I think it's really important that we do right by everyone and we work together to repair the social fabric of our city.
And Blair, one thing I heard her say earlier was that she gets tents and tarps from other places, not just the county.
That is what we're finding, that Multnomah County is not the only organization responsible for handing out these tents and tarps. The community donates to these nonprofits, or these nonprofits have relationships with other organizations, or they just pay for them themselves. So the reality is that the number of tents and tarps hitting our streets is much, much higher than what Multnomah County is handing out. And is that a bad thing? I mean, that really depends on who you talk to, because the people that do this work, they truly see this as a way to save lives. However, I will add, the majority of the people I talk with on the streets say they would prefer services over survival tools. Pat?
Interesting story, plenty of different sides to it. Thank you, Blair, appreciate it. Moving on now, if you pay close attention to politics in the city of Portland, which, come on, if you're watching this show, of course you do. You may have seen headlines recently about Mayor Ted Wheeler seizing power of the city bureaus ahead of the government transition in January. Well, that word choice makes things sound a little bit autocratic. But let me just tell you, this is the soft launch of the new government structure that we've been telling you about for the past few weeks. Wheeler is giving control to interim city director Mike Jordan. He's going to run the day-to-day operations with 6 deputy city administrators overseeing the 6 service areas, and each of those has a collection of bureaus in them now. Here's a look at all of those folks with Jordan there in the middle. He'll be overseen by Mayor Wheeler, which is how the new structure will work in 2025. To boil it down further for you, the politicians or the current city commissioners, they're going to be hands off. They're being pushed out of the picture 6 months before the official change happens. Now, in a statement, Mayor Wheeler says he will ensure that current commissioners, quote, have continued input and engagement on high-profile policy areas. Commissioners and their offices will continue to play a crucial role in leading policy and legislative initiatives. The mayor says this transition period will be to test and refine new processes ahead of January. We expect to hear more about this soft launch during a press conference early next week featuring Wheeler and Jordan. We'll be sure to bring you the highlights from that one. Coming up next on the story, the U.S. Supreme Court has a number of highly anticipated rulings that could still come down any day now, ranging from abortion to homelessness. What you need to know about their potential impacts here at home when the story returns. Let's take a few minutes now to talk about the U.S. Supreme Court. Let's look at rulings that have recently come down and a couple that we're still keeping tabs on that could come any day now. The topics: homelessness and abortion. The case that will most likely have the biggest widespread impact here at home is the one that we've been talking about now for a long time. It's out of Grants Pass, Oregon. A group of homeless people sued the city after a camping ban was passed, punishing people who were sleeping on public property like sidewalks or parks. The plaintiff's lawyers representing the homeless folks argue that because Grants Pass does not have enough shelter for all of its homeless people, and because sleep is a physical need, the camping ban violates the U.S. Constitution's 8th Amendment against cruel and unusual punishment.
People in Grants Pass are being given $295 tickets and thrown in jail for using a blanket in the middle of the winter because they have nowhere safe to sleep and there are no shelters. I can't think of anything more cruel than throwing someone in jail for trying to protect themselves against the freezing winter. And that's what this case boils down to. Are people allowed to use things like blankets and pillows in a town that has no housing and no shelter?
Those on the other side say that argument is ridiculous and that allowing homeless camping on public property is harmful and wrong.
I think the idea that the humane thing to do is to allow people to live in a public park or on a sidewalk is insane. And yet that is the argument that keeps being made on the other side is, oh, well, the nice thing to do is to allow people to swelter through these summers in a tent or to leave them to sleep in a gutter or in a sidewalk or something. That's crazy. These problems have existed since time immemorial. And we resolve them on a case-by-case basis by, in some cases, giving people the opportunities they need, and in some other cases, getting them the treatment they need, and in some other cases, punishing people for breaking the law.
The U.S. Supreme Court's opinion on this case is expected any day now, and you can be sure it's going to be our big story whenever it happens. Now, you may have heard about another ruling this week from the court. Its first case on abortion since overturning Roe v. Wade. Justices voted unanimously to keep the drug mifepristone on the market. It means people can get the drug in the mail without an in-person doctor visit. The case stemmed from Texas, where a group of anti-abortion doctors claimed the FDA did not properly vet the drug in 2000 and put women's health at risk. In its ruling, justices said those doctors did not have legal standing to sue, and as a result, the lawsuit will be dismissed. But this is not the only abortion case on the Supreme Court's docket. There's another case. It's out of Idaho, and it regards whether or not a federal law on emergency treatment at hospitals must include abortions, even in states where abortion is banned, like Idaho. A ruling on this case is also expected any day now. And even though abortions are allowed in the state of Washington, this week Governor Jay Inslee issued a directive to all hospitals in his state ahead of the Supreme Court ruling. Julie Calhoun explains.
A woman's right of choice is still under attack in the state of Washington. A reality we simply have to face.
The directive makes it clear that hospitals must provide emergency abortions if needed. State law already requires this, but the governor is now directing the Department of Health to specifically include hospitals' legal obligations and affirm state law doesn't change regardless of the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling on an abortion case out of Idaho.
The court could rule now any day that the federal emergency health care protections effectively do not protect a woman's right to emergency abortion services.
The Idaho case could impact a federal law that requires emergency medical care for patients, including pregnant women. According to Governor Inslee, that case would allow politicians to jail emergency room doctors for providing emergency abortion care.
When I or any doctor has a sick patient in front of me, I shouldn't have to pause and consult with the hospital's legal team to figure out if I'm able to act.
Dr. Sarah Prager at the University of Washington also spoke Tuesday, saying she's seen patients with pregnancy complications forced to travel to Washington State for care. UW research shows a 50% increase in out-of-state patients seeking abortion care since Roe v. Wade was overturned nearly 2 years ago.
It is a reality that we have to face. So I'm very proud that we're standing up again for a basic value of the state of Washington, which we respect this as an individual decision by a woman that should not be dictated by politicians.
We recently got our hands on data from the Guttmacher Institute, by the way, which tracks all kinds of things related to abortion and reproductive health care. The group is a research and policy organization looking to expand sexual and reproductive rights globally. We got numbers from Washington and Oregon regarding the number of clinician-provided abortions and how many people are traveling to the Northwest from other states for the procedure. Let's start in Washington state. In 2023, there were more than 23,000 abortions across the state, the vast majority being Washington residents. Idaho residents were next highest on the group at about 650. They were followed by Oregonians, 360, then people coming all the way from Texas with more than 250. And more than 100 Alaskans traveled to Washington for an abortion last year. The Guttmacher Institute notes that their total number is likely lower than the actual number because they only count out-of-state residents if there were more than 100 people from a single state moving there. Here's a look at Oregon's numbers for 2023. Nearly 12,000 abortions, with the vast majority being Oregonians. Nearly 700 people came across the Columbia from Washington for the procedure, and 400 came here from Idaho for an abortion. Coming up next on the story, an update on the old Gordon's Fireplace building in Northeast Portland. Plus, a sharp-eyed viewer of ours got in touch with me regarding a street sign in the city of Portland, and now changes are on the way. See anything wrong? We'll explain when the story returns. In Skamania County, residents and businesses are suing a railroad company over allegations that it caused this fire last July. It's called the Tunnel Wildfire. It's in the Columbia Gorge. The suit alleges that superheated particles from a BNSF freight train caused the fire, which destroyed 10 homes. A winery which has joined the lawsuit says the fires could have long-term effects on their vineyards in the nearby area, on top of all the damage to the property. A state report last fall indicated the blaze was sparked by a locomotive. This week, Portland City Council unanimously approved foreclosing on the old Gordon's Fireplace shop in Northeast Portland. We've covered this issue for a while now. The vacant building has become a graffiti magnet, as you can see, thanks to its visibility from I-84 and elsewhere. The property owner has racked up more than $20,000 in unpaid fines for code enforcement violations, things like graffiti, trash, and falling bricks. The foreclosure is the first step towards getting the building cleaned up, but don't expect it anytime soon. The property owner has until the actual foreclosure sale to pay the fines and fees to keep the building, and even after the sale, the owner can reclaim the property during a 90-day redemption period. And finally, tonight, we all make mistakes, but some are more visible than others. A sharp-eyed viewer sent me this picture the other day of a new street sign along Washington Street near Mall 205 on Portland's east side. Notice anything wrong? It's the southwest there. There is no Southwest Washington Street near Mall 205. This was taken at Southeast 99th. It should say Southeast. Whoops. I asked the Portland Bureau of Transportation about it and heard back from spokesperson Hannah Schaefer, who wrote, "After some sleuthing, I've learned that this sign was installed by a contractor for ODOT that is working on a joint ODOT-PBOT arts project. We've relayed the info of the incorrect sign to the team overseeing the contractors and expect it will be corrected soon. Thanks to your eagle-eyed viewer for making us aware of it." Well, you're very welcome. And by the way, I can totally relate to that, making mistakes on the streets where it's so visible. When I was in college, I worked for the street department of the city of Bellevue, east of Seattle. One morning, super early, we were laying down hot plastic, those big plastic arrows that are turned. I think it was by Bellevue Square, maybe on a major street like Northeast 8th, probably. I put the arrow down backwards and upside down, so it pointed at the traffic as the cars were passing over it. And no one in our crew noticed, including me, until around 8 a.m. when people started waking up and driving to work and started calling to complain. We had to go back with a grinder to remove the arrow, and then a different crew, because they didn't trust me anymore, put down a new arrow in the correct direction. That's the way that happens. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching, and remember, the story, our collective story, never ends. Big graduations at Portland State this weekend. Congrats to all the graduates who are going through the ceremony, including my son, Patrick. Timbers 360 is coming your way next. Enjoy your Father's Day weekend. I'll see you right back here on Monday at 6:30.